All right, let's talk about one of history's most incredible and honestly, most overlooked conflicts. It's a real David and Goliath story. But forget the shepherd boy and the giant. In this version, we've got a one-eyed queen up against the most powerful emperor on the entire planet.
So, picture this. It's 1910. An archaeologist is out there digging deep in the Sudanese desert, working on the ruins of this ancient city called Merowe. And after weeks of just, sand and more sand, he finally hits something big. He uncovers a temple, a place whose secrets have been buried for centuries.
But this dig, it turns up something really strange. See, buried right under the threshold, the main entrance to the temple, was this object. And it was placed there on purpose so that every single person who came in would have to step right on its face. So the big question is, what was it?
Well, it wasn't just some random artifact. Nope, it was the bronze head of Caesar Augustus. Yeah, that Augustus, the very first emperor of Rome, the guy in charge of the world's greatest army, pretty much the most powerful man on Earth.
And this really puts into perspective just how wild this discovery was. This head was found buried in the dirt 1,000 miles from Rome. 1,000! In a kingdom that, to the Romans, was basically the edge of the known world.
So, this is it. This is the central mystery we're going to unravel today. How in the world did the severed head of a Roman emperor get buried under a doorstep, in a temple, in the middle of Africa?
The answer, it turns out, lies in the story of this absolutely remarkable woman named Amanirenas. She was the Kandake, the one-eyed queen, and she didn't just fight Rome, she fought them to a complete standstill. And yeah, she made sure to keep a very permanent, let's call it a receipt of her victory.
So that brings us to Act 1, the collision. This is the story of what happens when a seemingly unstoppable empire runs headfirst into a queen who absolutely, positively refused to be conquered.
Okay, so let's set the stage. After the famous Battle of Actium, Augustus becomes the undisputed boss of the Roman world. By 24 BC, his legions have snapped up Egypt. And with that huge prize in his pocket, the emperor's gaze turns south. He's hungry for more land, more resources.
And this right here captures the fatal mistake Rome made. See, in their eyes, the kingdom of Kush was just, another barbarian territory, a place to get gold and slaves, an easy win. But the reality was completely different. Kush was a powerful, ancient civilization, and it was ruled by a warrior queen who was more than ready for a fight.
And that queen's title was Kondak. Now, this wasn't just some fancy ceremonial name. No way. It meant Queen Mother and Commander of the armies. Amanirenas was no figurehead. She was a veteran warrior who'd seen combat firsthand. She'd even lost an eye in battle. This was a leader who led from the front.
So, when the Roman guy in charge of Egypt moved some of his troops away for a campaign in Arabia, Amanirenas saw her opening. She wasn't going to sit around and wait for the Roman legions to come knocking on her door. No, she was going to strike first.
And that decision brings us to Act 2, the calculated insult. Because what she did next wasn't just a military attack. It was a message, and it was sent directly to the emperor himself.
Get this. Amanirenas personally led an army of 30,000 soldiers north, right into Roman-held Egypt. We're not talking about a small raid here. This was a massive, lightning-fast invasion, a true blitzkrieg aimed right at the Roman frontier. Her forces just rolled over the Roman garrisons at key spots along the Nile. They took Siena, then Elephantine, then Philae. The Roman cohorts were completely defeated, and the Kushites proved, without a doubt, they were a force to be reckoned with. But in the middle of all this fighting, they did something very specific, very symbolic. They actively sought out statues of Emperor Augustus. They pulled them down, hacked off the heads, and carried one all the way back south as a war trophy. And you have to understand why this was such a powerful move. To desecrate the emperor's image. That wasn't just vandalism. See, in Roman culture, the emperor was basically worshipped as a living god. So doing this, it was an incredible act of psychological warfare. It was a way of shouting to the world, your god is mortal and he can be beaten. As you can imagine, Rome was furious. And that leads us to Act 3. The empire strikes back. An insulted emperor is about to unleash the full might of his legions to punish the queen who dared to defy him. So a new Roman general, a guy named Petronius, marches south with 10,000 heavy infantry.
And on paper, you'd think the Romans had it all. Better armor, stricter discipline, the whole deal. But the Kushites had their own advantages, things you can't forge in a smithy. An intimate knowledge of the terrain, guerrilla tactics, and the ability to handle a brutal heat that would absolutely cripple the Roman legions.
At first, the Roman war machine did what it does best. Petronius pushed the Kushite forces back. He even managed to burn their city of Napata. But this was all part of Amanirenas' plan. She was luring them in, drawing them deeper and deeper into the desert, stretching their supply lines until they snapped. The Roman advance completely ground to a halt. And it turned into this bloody stalemate, with Amanirenas actually besieging a key Roman fort for 2 long years.
And that long stalemate, it leads us to the unbelievable climax of this story, Act 4, the unthinkable treaty. This is the moment the world's greatest superpower, an empire that pretty much never negotiated with its enemies, finally blinked.
So, in 21 BC, ambassadors from Kush traveled to meet Emperor Augustus in person. They came bearing a gift, a bundle of golden arrows, and the message that came with them was simple but powerful. If you want peace, these are a gift. If you want war, you're gonna need them. I mean, talk about diplomacy backed by steel.
And you know what? It worked. Augustus looked at the situation, calculated the cost of an endless, bloody war in the desert, and he did the unthinkable. He agreed to a peace treaty. And the terms? They were a total victory for Kush. Rome had to pull its borders back north, they had to cancel all demands for tribute, and they officially recognized Kush as its own independent power.
And that brings us right back to that bronze head. Amanirenas took her trophy home, and she buried it right under the entrance to the Temple of Victory in her capital city. For the next 400 years, her people got a daily reminder of their incredible triumph by literally walking over the face of the emperor who thought he could conquer them.
So all of this leaves us with one last big question. We spend so much time learning about the unstoppable might of Rome. So why is this incredible story, the story of a brilliant African queen and her powerful kingdom that successfully fought back against one of the greatest empires in history, so often just left out of our history books?